Hey guys, it's Fayon. Welcome back to another video on the passive hang. Bad news for me, unfortunately recently I suffered from a lower back compression injury. I've really been getting into a lot of arching acrobatics of late and been doing a lot of bridging volume and probably pushed it a little bit too far. So my lower back's been really compressed and I've had to do a few things to help unbind that area. So today I'm going to share with you 3 tools of what I've been using that have really just create a lot of space and allow some of the tissues around the lumbar, lower back area to help it get moving again. So I'm feeling a lot better now, which is why I can share with you this video today. And I'm going to share a bit more detail about the injury and how I'm managing that injury process in another video where I'll detail it with a few more steps about what I'm doing. But today I'm just going to keep it short and sharp with these 3 tools, which I think can generally benefit anyone, even if you're not directly suffering from lower back pain at the moment, just because I've performed them also when I'm just generally pain-free and they feel really, really great. So I know there's something in this for most people because at some time in your life you probably will get a little bit of a niggle in that area. So maybe, just maybe, some of these tools might be able to help you in those moments. All right, well, let's get started. So the first movement we're going to go through is what I'm going to call for this video a Flexion Slump. Don't really have an official name for it, but it's kind of adequate because it just looks like this, like a slumping type of action where you're putting your spine into a curve. But I'll give you a few subtle tips and cues to get the most out of this. What we're doing whilst we're in this position is we're actually going to be using the breath and relaxation to cause a contraction and expansion, especially through the back wall of the spine. So with myself, I was doing a lot of extension. So this whole right side really just clamped down and was really binded up. So doing this opposite action and then breathing through it really has helped just create a lot of space in that area. So we want to be familiar with this action of anterior and pelvic and posterior pelvic tilt. So when I sort of twerk my bum up to the sky like this, and then if I tuck my hips under as well, very important motion there. And also we're going to be playing around with this idea of pushing certain segments of the spine back. So when I try and push, say, my lower back just back in space and allow that one to be the furthest back in space. I've actually gone through that particular motion in more detail in another video, so I'll chuck that link for reference for you guys in the comments. Please check that one out because I think for generally that one can benefit a lot of people just to gain a lot of more awareness in how to move the spine, especially the lower back. So we're going to play around with this tilt and backward motion, and I'll do it from the side here. What I'll do is I'm going to tilt my pelvis, but I'm not going to do an aggressive posterior pelvic tilt. I'm just going to gradually tilt it, and you might end up in the most aggressive posterior pelvic tilt. It's very individual to you, or you might just be a little bit more in neutral. I'm just trying to create a little curvature in the spine, and you'll, for me, I'll just feel it most when I'm just in this position and it's a little bit past neutral. And then from there, I'm going to push this part of the spine just above my tailbone back in space here. And there's a moment for me here where I can really feel it opening up. So I'm in this position, and then from this position, just going to allow the belly to relax, still trying to push this point, and you can just kind of tap yourself in the back to feel that point. And then I'm going to combine it with this reach forward with the hands to create more of this slump type structure in my back. So I use the reach to slide the ribs and the scapula forward. And then I can just hold in this position here. And from here, we can then just use the breath to breathe nice and slowly into the belly, expanding and then contracting. So in here, I'm really directing the breath away from the chest into the stomach to really expand this area so that the tissues expand and contract here. And so in this slumping position, I'm just now just breathing. And as I do that, I can feel things lengthening, so my reach might get a little bit further. And I don't want to completely reach like this, because you can see here if I reach really aggressively, it starts moving more to the upper back, which might be fine if you want to concentrate more on the upper back, but you'll have to direct the breath then to be a little bit more above. But because I want to target this area, especially just around this waistband of my pants, then I want to just use my hands, the pelvic tilt, this push back of the spine here, just in the right way so that it's directing this part of the spine to have the most amount of space. So here, you can see, I'll just do very subtle motions of the pelvis. Even here, I'm sort of exaggerating it just so that you guys might see. And then I can also push my spine back, just like in that belly button area. Combine it with this reach, and then just try and relax, breathing in and then breathing out. And when I breathe in, I might hold it for a little bit to, if you can imagine, the breath is like a balloon, to make it bigger and just to hold it for a while, and then just to let go and breathe out. And I might just hold this for about a minute and breathe in and out and just allow that expansion, contraction of the breath to really open up the tissues. Little few modifications that you might be able to do with this on top of what I've already shown you is I might, from the back here, then move my pelvis to the left or to the right, and then reach opposite to the pelvis as well. So I could be slumping in this direction. I'll move and push my pelvis to the right, and then I might reach to the left. And I'll just turn around here. That's going to target different sides of the tissue. So you can just play with little tweaks. And it doesn't have to be like you're going, oh, like this or anything. It's just very subtle. We want to just move very slowly, and then you might have to play with your pelvis tilt. You might have to just try and push the spine back in a different position. You might have to just raise your hands or lower your hands and reach just a little bit differently, just so that you find the correct spot for you. And then you hold it, use the breath to once again expand and contract that area. And so for me, this one has just really helped a lot, especially during the first days when my back was really tightened up. Just using that, all manner of sensations just released all throughout the posterior chain, because it just really tightened up all the way from like my hamstrings up to my upper back, and using that power of just relaxation and not going into, I want to try and stretch as much as possible, but just being very particular with the stretch and then holding it and then breathing into that position. There are just very particular parts of the spine that you might find that you can just get the correct angle on that has never been held in that particular way, especially when we normally forward fold like this. You might just be flexing with the spine in a very habitual pattern. And so with this flexion slump, where we combine the pelvis tilt, the pushing back of the spine in a particular point, it could be here or it could be a little bit above here, the reaching in a certain way, and then also pushing the pelvis from side to side. You can really get to know maybe a very novel part of the lower back which hasn't been experienced that movement before, and for me that's been really beneficial. So that's the flexion slump, the first movement. The second movement I'm going to go through is the passive hang. Now, the channel is called the passive hang, so finally I'm going to do a little bit of a run through, but I'm going to run through it in a very specific way, different to the normal passive hang. So you're going to get some rings or a bar. I actually prefer a bar because the bar is fixed, and so it doesn't swing around everywhere, and then you can manipulate yourself underneath the fixed object. But because I don't have bars today, we're going to go with the rings. It's okay. So I actually set up these rings so they're not too high, so that I can still have my feet on, because what we're focusing on is to really relax in the position and not worry so much about how long you can hold it for with your grip strength or anything. I can use my feet, and then also I can use my feet to position my pelvis in certain different ways so that we can bias towards spinal decompression in the lower back and change the angles. So that's really important. You don't always have to hang up really high with your legs dangling, which is a really great tool as well. I just find that this way we have a few more options to play with different lines in the body. So hanging from the position here, I'm just focusing at first on just relaxing. And that's all we're doing, just sinking, so that I'm sinking down as much as possible, allowing my shoulders to come up. And from this position here, you can see the first leg position that we have here is with my feet behind, yeah? And with the feet behind, and when you're normally just hanging, you'll have probably a slight anterior pelvic tilt. And you can feel this anterior pelvic tilt is just natural when you have your feet behind. With the feet here, you can focus now relaxing not only in the shoulders, but relaxing with trying to drop your hip down. And so there's a sensation where you can just try and focus on, oh, can I just drop my hip lower and lower and lower, as if you're elongating the torso. And I can concentrate on this more when I have my feet on the ground and I'm not worrying about how long I can hold with my hands. And so here, you won't be able to see it, this. It's just very subtle. It's like, can I drop my hip lower and increase the space from my head to my pelvis and drop my hips down lower to the ground. And that's already creating a lot of space in the back. You can even supercharge that one if you have a friend and they just subtly hold you around the hips and just create a gentle downward pressure force around the hips here, pulling you down whilst you're holding on the rings to traction the spine even more for that decompression. So that would be the first position to start getting used to this idea of hanging for spinal decompression. Then with the feet, we can actually position it so that if we bring this forward and then cue a slight tuck of the pelvis, now we're in a different pelvis position, yeah? And then I can feel that now here where I try and drop the hips down, it's different to if I had the feet behind me. So now my pelvis is going from here to a more neutral position here, and again, that's creating space in the back in a different line. We can play around even more with the feet, where from here I can lift one foot off like this, And this just causes a hip hiking motion as well. So when I do this, now even though this is shortening on this side, this whole other side here, I'm creating a lengthening effect on the hip that's dropping down. And all we have to do is, from here, just think about raising one foot off and then the other. And you can also raise one foot here, hold it, and then just try and drop the other side down. So my right side at the back, that's the one that's compressed. So I'm trying to drop my right knee down to the ground and try and raise my left knee up. And this is where it becomes really helpful to use the bar, because on the rings you kind of want to twist this way, but then the bar with your feet on the ground will really help you fix into position, and then you can really subtly position your hips and your pelvis in the way that you want to find that exact right line. And just like in the flexion slump, you can hold this position and just breathe. Once again, just expand and contract and try and send the breath low. So you don't always have to like breathe up here or even the lower ribs. Try and send it down even lower with the belly going, pushing out and pushing in, which is a little bit harder when you're in a hanging position as well. So might be a little bit novel for you guys. Other than that, you can also position your feet any way you want. Like this, and again, this is just positioning the pelvis and the lower spine in very different positions. So I found for me, I really liked this twisted position here on both sides. And again, just trying to just breathe and drop my pelvis lower. Feels amazing. And so it'll just be very individual for you, where you can position your feet and then just trying to traction that spine and breathe into that space. Final one that you might find helpful as well is just introducing some really slow dynamics to that. So for me, that rotation was really helpful. So I would rotate from here to the other side, just twisting my pelvis left and right. And you can see here, if I really twist fast, like on the rings, I start twisting all the way around the rings. So again, when you're on the bar, you're fixed, so then it transfers more down directly into the spine. So to get the same effect on the rings, I might just keep my legs fixed on the ground so that I don't swing, and then I can swing and rotate through that lower part of the spine, but trying to keep the legs and the hands relatively fixed so that my spine is the one that is rotating, and just creating a little bit of that movement, and really focusing once again on just gentle drop of the hips and then that slight rotation. And you can do that in any of the other ways. You might find that, okay, like going forward and then backward is really nice. And so that's just very gently moving the spine. And if you want to exaggerate that motion even more, it can become a leg raise. And so when you raise your legs like this, then you're really flexing that spine. Obviously that's more of a strength demand, so it's probably not suitable for everyone, but you can imagine maybe you get a chair in front of you and you put your legs up in front of the chair, and then you get that nice slump again, and then you can breathe into that position. So those are just some of the cues that I've really been enjoying for the use of using the passive hang. Other than, normally the passive hang is used for a lot of other great benefits, but this one is really particularly targeted to decompress that lower spine with the pelvis, just by a few simple modifications. All right, third and final movement I call the banded Bartz curl. So you're gonna need a band. Start with a lighter band. You can progressively work your way up just to get started. Credit to Joseph Bartz for this one. If you haven't checked out his work, give him a search. Fantastic movement teacher. Got this one from him, so that's why I call it the Bartz curl. So with a band, I'm going to put this underneath my foot, and this movement now is going to really work at tractioning the spine with a little bit of load and then moving the spine. So I'm going to hold it with the same side hand, and I'm never going to bend the elbow because I'm going to use my spine to do the movement rather than it just being like a rowing type action. So from here, we're going to introduce the slump that we were doing beforehand in the first movement. And from here, you can just play around with the slump action. So you can allow yourself just to sink, be pulled toward your foot. Again, if I reach forward more, it's going to be more like upper back. If I'm trying to slump more and push my hips back a little bit, it might target a little bit of the lower back. So it really depends on where you want to target. And then once in that position, you can just hold for a little bit and again use that breath to expand and contract and find a different line. But now you have the added band tension to give you a little bit more traction in the spine. And then from here, the first way we can perform this Bartz back curl is you just curl up with the upper spine like this and then back down. Curl up, so I'm making my chest proud, and then back down. Up and down. Once you have familiarity with that movement where it's really just coming from the back pulling and not pulling with your hand and arm, then you can play around with this pelvis tilting action. So from here, I'm in this posterior pelvic tilt, and it can either be really aggressive or maybe just slight, just depending on where it's going to give you the most amount of space at the back. And then as I pull with my upper back, I'm going to then pull with my pelvis so that I'm in anterior pelvic tilt with my butt twerking up. And then I reverse the motion down again, up and then down. And for me, especially when I traction it quite nicely, so I'm just going to reach down a little bit lower and then I twist in a certain way to just here, and then I come up and I don't have to rush it. Oh, I can feel now those tissues really working, and then forming a slow eccentric down where I could either keep my pelvis like this and then lead with the chest down, or I could lead with the pelvis and then the chest, or I could come all the way at the same time, simultaneously in unison, coming back down. And that just feels absolutely fantastic on my back. So just perform it a few more times like this. In this angle, you can see here. So here, going to go into this slump, find the line, rotate, push the hip back in a certain way, pulling with the upper back only, then pulling with the pelvis and the upper back. Then you can either lead with the pelvis down, or you can lead with the upper back down, or in unison like this. Woo. Now I'll switch over to the other side. And what I demonstrated to you was where you have the same side hand and foot, ipsilateral. You can perform it that way, but then to get a stretch across like the diagonal sling of your back, you can hold so that you have the opposite hand and foot, and then do the same thing again. So in the contralateral pattern, you can perform this nice back curl here. On this side, I can try and target a different line. Pulling with the back and then coming down. Oh, absolutely ripper movement, this one of my favorites once I first saw Joseph share this on his channel as well. And that's the way I've been performing and playing around with it. That has just really helped find particular angles and lines. Once my back started feeling better, then I could traction it with a bit of load using this band. And my aim is, I'll increase the intensity of the band to traction it a bit further. And when you perform sets of this back, your whole back is just, your erectors are working really hard, so you get a really good back pump. I love it. And so I'll move onto a heavier band after I get a little bit more strength, a little bit more confidence in my back. But this one has been a real big key critical part of it, because there's something where you're just working the back muscles from the end range. You can imagine like from this slump to this shortened range here, and you don't really get that sort of direct way where you can manipulate it with in 3D space almost in these different lines. Normally, if people are doing these back arches and stuff, it's very like in this linear set line, but here you can just find that correct angle and then work and pump your back out. It's awesome. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. That's it for today, guys. I am sorry because I lied to you at the start of this video. It wasn't a short one, but I'm a stickler for details, and I hope you guys appreciated just the subtleties and the cues that I get a lot of a kick out of, because the body is a very complex thing. When you approach it with more sensitivity, with more subtlety, with how you can position your structure in certain ways, you can unlock and unbind a new experience, a new sensation, which for me just feels amazing each time. So I hope that feels amazing for you guys as well. Just remember, with any of these tools, if you are actually suffering from back pain, reach out and work with a professional to try and understand a little bit more about that pain as well, especially if you're unfamiliar with these types of processes and how to approach them, and a little bit lost with how to guide your way out from that. With these tools, like I mentioned, really just take them patiently and try and find that particular point in 3D space so that you can really just open up that area that you're trying to open up. Remember, for a lot of us with this lower back region, we're sometimes always locked in this position, and even just doing this posterior to anterior pelvic tilt for a lot of people is a very novel way of moving. So with this one, we're giving a lot of different inputs in here with a lot of different angles, and then working with the breath, the inner wall in there to help move a lot of the tissues. So could be a lot for some people. So just take it easy and be patient with your body. All right, well, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to hit me up in the comments box below. Otherwise, you can also reach out to me at thepassivehang.com. And if you are interested in learning movement and my style of movement, please head over to my website. That's at thepassivehang.com. Also, like this video, please feel free to share it with a friend. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.